Welcome to the Upper Cumberland Reporter Coaches Show, brought to you by Ford Lincoln of Cookeville. I am Noah McKay, joined by Buddy Pearson. We are back. We've got a fun show planned. It's BlueCross Bowl week, which means in Cookeville and the Upper Cumberland, get ready for longer waits at all the restaurants, more traffic, but an exciting time. It's great to be able to host.
Terrible parking at Tennessee Tech.
Terrible parking, but it's great to be able to host the event in Cookeville. We're lucky to have it, and so we're going to give you our picks for the 1A through 6A state championship games. Then we're going to talk a little basketball, get into the Putnam County teams, talk about their season so far and kind of our outlooks for the year. But let's start with the BlueCross Bowl, buddy, and let's start with the 1A state championship game. Greenback 11-2 taking on Lake County 13-0. How do you view this game at the outset?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think Greenback was expected to be there. They won the 2017 championship. They fell short in 2018. But what really stands out to me is they beat South Pittsburgh.
Right.
They beat South Pittsburgh by 1 point, and we kind of thought all year that South Pittsburgh was the team to beat, that South Pittsburgh was one that's going to be in Cookeville that we'd be watching. Hey, right now, to me, they've got all the momentum. I mean, they've knocked off the number one team, the team that everybody thought was going to win the state championship. But, you got a Lake County team that's undefeated. They won 2 state championships back in the 80s. They've not been there in a while, so this is kind of new territory for them.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with the Greenback, like you said, they beat South Pittsburgh, and all year we've kind of penciled in, in 3A, how at this point you just pencil in Alcoa state champion.
Yeah.
We've been doing that with South Pittsburgh with good reason. They were a tremendous football team. They had 60 kids. Greenback, though, beats them. That's a real statement, and I think you can be said for playing your best ball at the right time, but you're right. Lake County is undefeated, and so they're coming in thinking, hey, you could think Greenback's all this, but at the end of the day, Greenback has 2 losses. We have 0, so it's a very intriguing game in 1A. Let's go ahead and get the pick. I'll go with Greenback just because I feel like they're playing the best football. I think they beat what we thought was the best 1A team in the state in South Pittsburgh last week. They are playing with a lot of confidence. I think they come to Tucker Stadium and win a state championship for the second time in 3 years.
Yeah, I'm going to be able to have the call on the Tennessee Radio High School Football Network, so I'm really looking forward to this game, but I'm going to go with Greenback. I'm like you, you beat South Pittsburgh, you are the team to beat, whether or not you have 2 losses.
Yeah, so we're in agreement there in 1A. Let's move to 2A, another interesting matchup. Peabody, 14-0, taking on Meigs County, 13-1. This is a Meigs County team that just beat Trousdale County, which is one of those teams all year we talked about them. That was a big win for Meigs County. How do you assess this game?
Well, I didn't see Meigs County coming out of this at all. I thought Watertown or Trousdale, whoever won that football game, was going to be playing for a state championship. So for Meigs County to beat Trousdale, that was huge. But Peabody is the defending state champs. They're going for 2 in a row. They're undefeated. I mean, they're a machine. I just don't think Meigs County is going to be able to stack up. I think this is going to be, if there's going to be a rout in the games on Saturday, this first game on Saturday is probably going to be a rout.
Peabody is playing tremendous football right now. They're a 2A powerhouse. You mentioned it, trying to go back-to-back. They know what it's like to come to Cookeville and win a state championship game. We can't forget, you're talking about 16, 17-year-old kids coming to Tucker Stadium in a crazy environment. It's 3 games going on. It's totally different than what you're used to. You just got to get out there and start playing almost.
Right.
Peabody's done it before. They're 14-0. I expect them to complete an undefeated season. I agree with you. I'll take Peabody to win this game. I don't know necessarily if it's going to be a blowout, just because you look at Meigs County. I mean, they hold Trousdale to 20 points last week. That's a hard thing to do.
That is a hard thing to do.
And when you play good defense, it's hard to get blown out. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a blowout, but I'll take Peabody in this game. Let's move to 3A. I know there's a lot of interest here among some people here because, of course, we got a 3A school who's very good. Pearl Cone, 14-0. They're trying to slay Goliath in Alcoa. Alcoa is 13-1. And here's the thing. All year we talked about on this side of the bracket, because we were obviously talking about the Upperman Bees being a top 4 in this side. Alcoa, Loudon, Red Bank, Upperman. Yeah. Red Bank beat Upperman.
Right.
Loudon beat Red Bank pretty handedly.
Right.
And then last week, Alcoa said, it's not really a top 4, it's a top 1, because they beat Loudon 56-0.
Yeah.
That was one of the most shocking results I've seen in a very long time. Alcoa put an end to all of this. Maybe there's a
discussion.
Team. To me, Pearl Cone, and there's been some noise coming out of Pearl Cone that they feel like they're the team that does it. I don't see it. I think Alcoa is going to win this football game again and just roll to their 92nd state championship in a row.
I think the 2 best teams in these brackets are playing for a state championship. I think Pearl Cone is the best team in that lower bracket, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Alcoa's got 17 state championships. They've won 4 in a row. Pearl Cone was runner-up in 2015. They won state championships back in the late 90s, but this isn't the late 90s anymore. This is an Alcoa Class 3A dominance.
Yeah.
And so, Alcoa is going to win that 5th state championship. They're going to win 18, and they're going to stay at least one ahead of Maryville.
I agree with you in that Pearl Cone is the best team on that bottom half of the bracket. They're undefeated. You have to respect that.
Yeah.
Of all the teams in 3A, I expect them to give Alcoa the best shot that they've had.
Right.
But at the end of the day, this Alcoa team is just a machine right now. And they're just rolling. And I think the scary part is we always know they have good offenses. This defense by Alcoa, you look at the region, they've given up, I think it was less than 20 points all season in their region. And their region includes a top 10 team in Gatlinburg-Pittman, who they played twice, blew them out. Every time they've come across a 3A team, they've blown them out. Their only loss came against Maryville, who's going to be playing for a state championship in 6A.
Yeah.
So no harm there. This Alcoa team is just firing on all cylinders. I'll take the Tornadoes again to get their 5th straight state championship. Let's move to 4A. Elizabethton, 14-0, taking on Springfield, 11-3. Elizabethton knocked off Nolensville last week. That was a team that beat DeKalb County, and Livingston Academy knocked out 2 of our local schools. How do you view this 4A state championship?
Well, first, if you're from East Tennessee, it's Elizabethton.
Sorry.
It's Elizabethton.
Yes.
That's how you got to say it, Elizabethton.
Yes, you're correct, yes.
So Elizabethton is undefeated. This is their first appearance in a state championship game, so they've made 12 straight playoff appearances. But I tell you what, for them to be able to get past Nolensville and Greenville tells me a lot about this football team, because those are 2 quality programs and quality football teams. And then you've got Springfield, who knocked out my beloved Hardin County Tigers in the quarterfinals. So, I know they're good, but I can't root for them. I can't pick them. They beat my Hardin County Tigers. So it's Elizabethton all the way.
Elizabethton. So I can pronounce it correctly. But yeah, beating Greenville was very impressive. Greenville was coming off a state championship, and then they handled Nolensville last week. And it was a Nolensville team that beat handedly a Livingston Academy team that we saw that we know is very good. DeKalb County that was firing on all cylinders, and all Elizabethton did was beat them just easily last week. So I agree with you. I think they're going to win. They're going to move to 15-0 on the year. This is a good Springfield team. Don't get me wrong at all.
They were runner-up in 2017.
Exactly. It's a good Springfield team. They certainly could win this championship game. It wouldn't stun me by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm with you. I'll take Elizabethton to win the 4A state championship. Let's move to 5A. 5A is always a kind of a weird classification for me. We don't have any schools in here. They're kind of in between that 4A and 6A.
Yeah.
They just sit there. But it's a good matchup. Summit 12-2 taking on Knoxville Central 12-2. How do you view the 5A state championship game?
Well, to me, this is like a team in the Knoxville Central Bobcats who's been there before. They're the defending state champs. They won in 2018. They were runner-up in 2016 and 1999. And you've got Summit that really has kind of come out of nowhere.
Yep.
This is their first ever trip to a championship, their 4th straight playoff appearance. So this is one of those programs that's kind of up and coming. And to me, I think Summit is one of those, man, we're just happy to be here. This is great. We're going to, enjoy the experience. Yep. I'm sure they're coming to win the football game, but I think when it's all said and done, the defending state champs, Knoxville Central Bobcats, are the ones that's going to be taking that gold ball back to Knoxville.
I agree with you. When it comes to the BlueCross Bowl, and we talked about that environment a little bit earlier, if it's a matchup between a team who's been there before and a team who hasn't, I'll take the team who's been there before 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Thus, I'm going to take Knoxville Central in this football game. I just think having that experience, knowing what this is like, knowing this is a business trip, this isn't just to enjoy Cookeville, to enjoy the atmosphere. We're trying to take away a state championship. I think that gives Knoxville Central the edge. I will take them to win the 5A state championship. And now, maybe my favorite matchup of the state championships, the 6A game. Maryville, 14-0. Taking on Ravenwood, 13-1. And this is a Ravenwood team that's playing really good ball. It's a Maryville team that just beat Oakland and held Oakland to 0 points. They only scored 12, but they blanked. It was an Oakland offense that had been struggling, and they only scored 28, I believe, the week before against Blackman. But still, to shut out Oakland, a very impressive win. How do you view this game?
Well, this is a marquee game. I mean, it's a Class 6A championship. It's Saturday night. It's one everybody wants to come see. Everybody thought Maryville and Oakland really should have been the state championship game, because really everybody thought those are the 2 best teams, not just in Class 6A, but maybe with the exception of Alcoa, but in all of high school football in the state of Tennessee.
I agree.
And so for Maryville to shut out Oakland, I mean, that's huge. But then you got Ravenwood, was able to watch that Ravenwood-Houston game on television and was really impressed with how Ravenwood plays, because Houston, every time they tried to draw close, Ravenwood had an answer for them. Very athletic. I mean, just has talent all over the field. Maryville, what can you say? 16 state championships. The last one came in 2017. They're hungry to get back, into the win column in a state championship game. They've got 23 championship appearances. I mean, they know what it's like over and over again. Ravenwood, they were the champs in 2015 and 2005, so they've got a couple of gold balls there for their efforts. This is their 5th finals appearance. I'm not so sure that from an experience standpoint that's going to matter. But what I do think is it comes down to defense, and Maryville has the better defense. Maryville beat Alcoa, for crying out loud.
I think it's very good points. And first of all, what a powerhouse area that is. Maryville and Alcoa right next to each other, just consistently going to state championship games and winning the whole thing. But yeah, you mentioned it. Now, the interesting thing for me is if you look back behind Oakland, so behind the semifinal game, I think Ravenwood's had the tougher path to getting here. They played some more difficult opponents than Maryville has. But at the end of the day, you're right. Shutting out Oakland is just such an impressive thing. Defense wins championships. I honestly can see this game going either way. Ravenwood played a very good Houston team, doubled them up 42-21. But I think I'm going to go with Maryville. I'll take the Rebels in this game.
I was going to say, wait a minute, McKay. Maryville beat Oakland and Dobbins-Bennett and Farragut on their way to the state championship. Ravenwood beat Houston, Brentwood, Independence.
Brentwood and Independence is not an easy road.
I don't stack them up with, I'm not going to stack them up with Dobbins-Bennett and with Oakland.
Behind Oakland, I'll take Ravenwoods. I think those would be interesting matchups if you matched them up. Regardless, we're in agreement on the pick. We'll take Maryville, but it wouldn't surprise me if either team wins this game. What a great way to finish out the weekend on Saturday night. The atmosphere will be great between those two schools. So we'll both take the Rebels. Those are our 6 picks for the BlueCross Bowl. We're not going to worry about the private schools. They
don't watch the show anyway.
Exactly.
Private schools don't watch the show, so why should we even pick them?
Exactly. There's our 6 picks that will inevitably be wrong. But good luck to every team playing in the BlueCross Bowl. Enjoy Cookeville. We appreciate all the business everyone's bringing up. The businesses love it. It's great to have all the people up here experiencing our great city. All right, now let's turn our attention to the hardwood, buddy. It's basketball season. We're about 5 or 6 games into all of our team seasons. We're going to focus on the 3 county schools just so we can get a good grasp on everything that's happening. If we go beyond that, we'll just be spewing stuff we don't know about. We don't want to do that on this show.
I'm going to be doing that anyway. So.
There you go. But let's start with Monterey. The Monterey girls team, of course, they've struggled in recent years. Now they're under second-year head coach Mark Sims. The girls right now are 3-4, which is moving ahead. They have wins over Oakdale, Valor Collegiate, and Bledsoe County. That's a good win over Bledsoe County. Their losses are against Cannon County, Oneida, which were both not very close, but Smith County only by 10. Right. Van Buren County, perennial powerhouse, only an 8-point loss. And as I mentioned, second-year head coach Mark Sims. They're starting to build some talent there in Monterey. They're starting to get things moving in the right direction. A couple years ago, 3 wins this early in the year would have been unheard of.
That's just not a few years ago. I mean, that was like for
forever,
like 10 or 15 straight years. I mean, you got to go back to when Molly Hetty was a freshman at Monterey before she transferred to Clark Range, before they really had a chance to do anything on the hardwood there. But it's good to see them, that this coach is really has them playing better, and they have a better opportunity. They used to be the doormat of District 7A, but not anymore.
No, I mean, only an 8-point loss against Van Buren County is the one that really gets your attention because, hey, this may be a Monterey team that's a few years away talent-wise from, really competing in this district in the region. But if you're well coached and you play with a lot of effort, you can stun some teams. Already 3-4, things are looking up. If they can get a 500 season this year, that's a huge win for the Monterey girls basketball program. So props to Mark Sims for his job he's done so far. He had his team ready to play early in the year. They'll look to continue that momentum. Let's look to the boys' side, though. This Monterey boys team is scary, buddy. They are 7-0. They were 1 win away from going to a state championship last year, or state tournament last year, I should say. They fell in the sub-state game in a very close matchup. Their closest margin of victory this year has been 8 against Oneida. Every other game has been at least a 19-point win. They have guards all over the court. Peyton West, senior forward Kevin Borjas. They've got players all over the court. And then the X factor for me is the head coach, Adam West, one of the best coaches in 1A in the state. This is a team that could be really scary this year. I expect Monterey to be competing with Clay County again, just like they were last year in the district. And they have a good chance of going at least as far as they did last year, if not what they did a couple years ago, which was going back to a state tournament.
Right.
And I covered them on that state tournament run. That was a very good team. This team kind of reminds me of them. They're different components, but you got to give props to Coach Adam West because, a lot of times teams will go to a state tournament and then they'll fall off a cliff.
Right.
He hasn't done that. They've retooled. They've lost some players, but they've gotten a couple more. They've retooled, and now they're right back to where they were, sitting at 7-0. And you look at their schedule, outside of Clay County, there's not a whole lot of games on that schedule where you say, hey, they're probably going to lose that game. And I don't even say that about Clay County. This could be a very good regular season for Monterey.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's always a tough district. 7A is always a tough district. And even though they may win those games, you got teams like Pickett County, Clark Range, of course, Clay County, Jackson County that are going to give them battles night in and night out, which prepares them for when they go into the postseason. But this is a Monterey team I think that's going to wind up being head and shoulders above everybody, and I think they're going to be head and shoulders above Clay County. I mean, I know Rob Edwards keeps doing a great job over and over again. I'm not sure where he finds those guys in Clay County, but he always has great teams. But this is Monterey's year. I mean, just like it was in football, I think, you know, the confidence of them being able to do what they did in football is going to ooze over into basketball because it's already been there. They went to the state 2 years ago. They were, you know, a game away last year, and now this year with all the pieces that they have, it might be Adam West's best team he's ever had. And if that's the case, you know, you can expect to see them maybe in Murfreesboro come springtime.
And the thing with this Monterey team is, and with every 1A team in East Tennessee or Middle Tennessee, is you get to the state tournament, you run into the Memphis schools, right? And they get off the bus and they look like just a totally different ballgame. It looks like AAA schools.
Right.
But you think back a couple years ago, this team that went to the semifinal round of the state tournament, they were in that game against Loretto into the end.
Yeah.
You know, they get a couple of shots to fall their way. They're maybe playing for a state championship.
Right.
This team, we'll see how they develop. That team really did a nice job of developing throughout the season. They had a bit more of a post presence than this team does. You know, they lose some of those big guys. But if they get in these big games and some of these kids on the outside, these guards can hit big shots, this is a Monterey team that can make some serious noise this year. Not to mention, those kids were freshmen then. They're juniors and seniors now. They've been to the glass house if you are to make it back. They played in big games.
That's right.
It's a totally different mindset if you played in it, just like we talked about with the BlueCross Bowl. So I expect them to be competing for the district title this year. Now let's move to Baxter, Upperman. Let's start with the girls, of course, a perennial powerhouse. They've won 2 state championships in the last 3 years. They sit at 4-1, and I think everybody's attention got grabbed. Game number 1 when they lost to Westmoreland.
What was that all about?
Shocking, until you realize something. And in this area, we just, you know, Westmoreland's not on the radar. Westmoreland then beat Macon County, who's another state championship contender. So I'd say pump your brakes on the panic if you were panicking about the Lady Bees, because in reality, Westmoreland may all of a sudden be a contender this year in AA, as well as a Macon County and an Upperman team. But since then, the Upperman girls have rounded off 4 straight wins. They've won by 34, 16, 28, and 38 points. This is an Upperman Lady Bees team coached by Dana McWilliams that appears to be primed for another really good season.
Well, you know, they've got great guards like always because Dana knows how to coach great guards, but they've also have a great inside presence with Abigail Johnson, who's a freshman, and she's played better those last couple of games. Didn't play very well against Westmoreland, but you could tell, man, she's had a couple of double-double games, and so as she plays better, that's really going to open up those outside shooters because, you know, when they start collapsing the defense to guard her, man, that opens up 3-pointers, and that's what Dana McWilliams loves to see. She loves to see her girls hit those 3-pointers.
Abigail Johnson and then Ashlyn McClellan, who's been out with an injury recently, or so I've been told. You know, that's that inside presence that they lacked a little bit last year. They were a little bit guard-heavy last year. They lost to DeKalb County in the region tournament, which was a surprising loss. DeKalb County then goes on a run towards the state tournament, so they put it together towards the end of that year. But they were a little bit guard-heavy at times last year. It got them in trouble when they couldn't hit those 3-pointers in big games. Think about the game at Macon County. They struggled to make shots. That DeKalb County game, the big games that they lost in 2018 was because they lacked some of that inside post presence. A player like Abigail Johnson could really help them out with that. Bottom line for me, this is a very good UHS team. I expect it to be a similar story to the last several years. It's going to be them and Macon County battling for this District 8 AA title.
In the district title, the region title.
State title possibly.
And, you know, could see them again in state. I mean, this is one of those things where, you know, you play them in the regular season twice, you probably play them in the postseason twice, and you could see them in the state tournament again. I mean, they could conceivably play 5 times, and one of them being for a state championship.
I totally agree. DeKalb County's still out there. They battled a couple of very serious injuries. They're a young team, which was the interesting thing last year was they were pretty young when they went on that run. They did lose a couple of pieces, but I still expect this to be Upperman and Macon County battling it out at the top of this district, this region, and this state. When the AP poll comes out, I expect Westmoreland to be ranked number 1. I expect Upperman and Macon County to be ranked in the top 10. I really do. That's how good this Westmoreland team has been playing. They're undefeated, and you have 2 wins over Macon County and Upperman.
That's pretty big.
No team in AA right now has 2 bigger wins in girls basketball. Let's move to the other side. It's the boys. And my, oh my, Buddy Pearson, this Upperman boys team is 5-0. Let's put it frankly, they're steamrolling everybody. Closest margin of victory, 23 points, and they are so deep. We've talked a lot on this show about Donovan McAllister. He was the senior quarterback of the football team. He's back on the basketball team. He's one of their important guards. He comes off the bench. He's one of the best athletes.
He's not even a star on this team. I mean, you know, he can be, but I mean, my goodness, you look at that starting 5. I mean, they've got height. They've got the ability to shoot the ball. They've got good ball handlers. I mean, this is probably the most complete Upperman team I've ever seen in 20 years.
And I say all that to say, it's arguably one of the best athletes in the history of the school, comes off the bench, and with good reason, because the starting five is so good that they have right now under Coach Bobby McWilliams, and they made a statement game one. Riverdale comes to town, and yes, Riverdale lost a lot of pieces, but Riverdale is a powerhouse.
It's still Riverdale.
They beat Riverdale by 36 points, ladies and gentlemen. 36 points. They went to King's Academy, who's a private school that can recruit their players. I mean, unashamedly, they can get their players to come there. They won by 23 on the road. This Upperman team is... you got to say it's one of the best teams in AA, if not the best team in AA right now. This Upperman B team.
If there is a better team in AA, I want to see who it is, because I'm telling you, this is the most complete Upperman team. Colin Gore Jr. just got his 1,000th point. I mean, you got Milos Babic's son, who played in the NBA, who just was inducted into the Tennessee Tech Sports Hall of Fame. His son playing at Upperman, in addition to all the other weapons that they have. I mean, it's crazy. You've got size. I mean, you have. I know Bobby McWilliams has worked really hard, and the girls program has stolen a lot of the headlines at Upperman because of their success. But I'm telling you right now, this Upperman boys team is primed to do something for this year and the next couple of years. Yeah, and you mentioned next couple of years. You look at the roster, not very many seniors at all. I mean, that's the scary part. Colin Gore is a junior. Alex Rush is a sophomore. These kids are going to be here for a while. He's like, what, 6'8"?
Yes, he's a huge kid. And then you have Babic now, because last year Rush was really the only guy in the paint for them. Now they have a couple of those guys. J-Ron McClellan, who got hurt at the end of football season, he's going to come in and be an important contributor. But you talk about how deep this team is. The players they can pull off the bench could be a starting lineup on most AA teams. You're talking about Donovan McAllister, Colin Gore, Alex Rush, all these players, Babic. It goes on and on and on with players who can come in at any time and play significant minutes, and there's not a drop-off. That's the difference between good teams and great teams. If you have that depth, when you can go to the bench, keep your players rested, and not have a drop-off, that's when you become a great team. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but if you look at teams around the area, Upperman right now looks like the school that may have the best chance of sweeping their 2 state championships, just because you know how good the girls are. And this boys team, you look at the schedule, you tell me where the 10-point game is on their schedule. I've looked at it, I don't see it in regular season. Now, when you get to the region tournament and sub-state, you get outside of this area, you may have a different story. You have some closer games, which could be an issue that we have to talk about. If you don't play any close games, are you concerned about that? But this Upperman team is clearly the class of the district at this point.
You still, again, it's their district that makes them so good, because, you've got to play at DeKalb County, you've got to play at York, I mean, you've got to play at some hostile environments, and so you really, you've got to play at Livingston. I mean, there's some great basketball rivalries between those schools, so yes, on paper, obviously it's Upperman, but I mean, they're going to be put through the test through the regular season. They won't breeze through the regular season by no means, especially when you have to go to those places.
You look at District 8 AA right now, I think the only team that really jumps out that says, hey, maybe we have an argument is York. We got to look at them last night live on the Upper Cumberland Reporter when they took on Cookeville. It's a York boys team that knocked Upperman out of the region tournament last year. Pretty good team. I think Upperman has the advantage in a lot of regards, but that's the one place going to York, which Upperman's going to have to pay attention to. You can't sleepwalk into that ball game or you'll get beat by the Dragons. So those are our outlook on Upperman, the boys and the girls, and we're going to be there. I'll be there Friday night on the call live on the Upper Cumberland Reporter. It's LA, Livingston Academy taking on Upperman from Baxter. Girls game starts at 6 o'clock. You're not going to want to miss that one. All right, buddy, now let's move to Cookeville, the Cavaliers and Lady Cavs. Let's start with the Lady Cavs, who have had a good start to their season. They're 5-1 right now. We saw them last night. I was up in Jamestown as they took on the York Lady Dragons. They started out slow. They pulled away late to get an 11-point win over York. They only lost this year for Cookeville came against Riverdale, who is a powerhouse in AAA. I mean, arguably the best AAA program in the state in girls basketball. They lost by 4.
Wow.
So that tells you this was a Cookeville team coming into the year that I said, hey, watch out for this Lady Cavs team.
Yeah.
They are loaded. You look around this team, they're loaded, especially at the guard position.
Got the Dunaway twins.
The Dunaway twins, and one of the Dunaway twins hasn't even been able to play so far due to injury, and yet they still are loaded at the guard position. You talk about Olivia Shipman, Chloe Maynard, who's new. She came over from Upperman. She's now at Cookeville.
Right.
Emma Webb, Alyssa Love, Bailey Gillis, who's, of course, one of Coach Jamie Gillis' daughters, had 7 3-pointers against Warren County. School record. She had 21 points. All of them were from the 3-point range. She has unlimited range. And even more than that, they have so many guards on their bench, not to mention girls like KK Graves, Cassie Shope on the inside.
Right.
Much like we talk about the Upperman boys but having a lot of depth, this is a Cookeville girls team that has a ton of depth. They can roll those guards out there, which keeps them fresh, which is huge when it comes to big games. So this is a very good team. I'll say it bluntly. This is a team that can compete in AAA this year. They really can.
They beat Lebanon. I mean, they knocked off Lebanon the first game of the season.
And if the AP poll would come out in the preseason, Lebanon would have been ranked 1 or 2, and Cookeville beat them at home. That was a very good win. And Cookeville hasn't even played. And I talked to Coach Jamie Gillis last night, and she said we haven't played a complete game yet, which is really the exciting part about it. They put on their schedule. Told me straight up, I knew what I was doing when I put this schedule together.
Sure.
She put it together to test her team early. So far, they've really passed the test. I know you'd rather beat Riverdale, but only losing to Riverdale by 4.
It's a moral victory.
It kind of is a moral victory. It really is. I really genuinely don't believe in that, but having a moral victory against Riverdale this early in the year, because that's a team you may face later if you go on a run, and hey, we can compete with this team. A lot of teams don't know if they can compete with Riverdale. You do. I also want to shout out KK Graves. I mentioned her last night, 22 points, only a sophomore.
She was player of the game, wasn't she?
She was the player of the game last night. She was one of the she's been a key contributor on this team, only a sophomore, really developing into a good player. It's a different player every night. The first game we did for Cookeville, it was Emma Webb. Last night, it was KK Graves. This is a scary team in girls basketball this year.
It really is. And, it's been so fun to watch these girls develop over the years. My daughter Savannah played with and against all these girls in middle school, and to see them now at high school, and Jamie Gillis come over, and, a great coach, a great hire. Man, she's so intense. I love the intensity. I love to see those intense coaches like she is. And you kind of knew, you kind of wondered if the loss of the Savage girl from last year was going to hurt because, she had such a great year and she was such a dominant presence in the paint. It's good to see these other girls step up. And maybe they're a little bit more well-rounded now.
And that's what I was going to say.
They certainly have to distribute out the scoring a lot more than they have in the past.
Yeah, that's exactly. You hit the nail on the head because, yes, Chloe Grace Savage was a great player for this Cookeville Lady Cavs team, but I felt at times last year it was a little bit too much of Chloe Grace Savage, if that makes sense. She's a dominant player, but they were consistently feeding her, and other players weren't involved in the offense. This year, you have to get those other players involved in the offense. You don't necessarily have that one dominant go-to player, which is and the reason I say that is that works really well when you're playing some teams, but when you run into those region games, when you play a team like Stone Memorial last year is really good, they come in and say, we're taking her out of the game, beat us. Yeah. And this year, they're going to be more well prepared to do that. If a team takes a KK Graves out of the game, right, they double her, they make sure she's denied the basketball, other players are already in positions to put their team in a position to succeed, which is the big difference, I think, this year than it was last year for this Lady Cavs team. But the thing is, in this district, it's kind of similar to Upperman's district. In that they have Macon County to deal with. You have White County to deal with. White County girls basketball team, the Warriorettes are very good this year. Both of these teams are. I expect to see them.
It's going to be wars whenever they play.
It's going to be wars. They're going to play each other a couple times in the regular season, a couple times in the postseason, and maybe all the way to the state tournament. Just like we were talking about with Upper Macon County, this White County team is very good as well. So you can't just say, hey, this district goes to Cookeville by any stretch of the imagination. Now let's move to the boys' side under first-year head coach Josh Hurd. They're 3-3. They got back to 500 last night with the win over York. That's a good win over a decent York Dragons squad for Coach Josh Hurd's team. I expect this to be a similar story for them. A little bit of an up and down year. They're still getting in the flow. Coach Hurd has come in and they changed the way they play. Yep. They want to run and gun up the court, up and down nonstop. And when they do that successfully, they're a really good team. You look at the starting 5 for the Cavs. It's a very good starting 5. The question mark comes when you get into that bench. Last night, they only had 4 players dressed on their bench. Due to injuries and all sorts of other things, only 4 players were on the bench and only 2 were key contributors to the game. When you play that running gun style, you'd like to have some more depth, which is why I expect an up and down season. But I will say this. I'm very impressed with what I've seen out of Coach Josh Hurd. I think he's going to be a good coach for the Cavs.
Oh, I think he's going to do a great job. He's been around for a long time. I was there when he played at Tech, and, he's coached middle school. He's been an assistant on the high school team. And talking with him a little bit, it's going to be, this Cookeville High Cavalier team is going to take kind of his personality, his philosophy, which is run and gun and shoot the 3. And if anybody who watched Josh Hurd play in college knows he lived and died by the 3-pointer, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to live and die by the 3-pointer. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not so good. So, you got to develop some rebounding and some defense and those other things, which I'm sure he's working on. But, it is a transition. You go from a Kevin Bray that was there for so long and had some outstanding seasons, but it was a much different philosophy now than what you have with Josh Hurd. So, the Cavalier fans, it will be different watching them. It'll be very exciting. Bailey Gillum and some of those guys who can really shoot the 3. I mean, you've got some outstanding players. You got Joseph Agee, who's a big man as a freshman. So there's some of these guys that, they may not be where they want to be right now, but throughout the season, I think you'll see them improve. And then when the tournament rolls around, this will be one of those teams where you're like, oh, wow, look how much better they are than when they were at the beginning of the season.
And the way they play, if they can hit a lot of those three-pointers in a game, that's the kind of team that's scary tournament time. You get hot. You can win a bunch of tournament games in a row. But a couple of things. Number one, last night against York was the best defensive game this Cookeville Cavaliers team has played. That's where they struggled a bit early in the year. They've had some defensive lapses. They were a lot better at that last night. Also, you got to give a shout out to Josh Hurd and a player in this regard. He noticed some talent that was sitting on the bench. Colin Gillum, he's the brother of Bailey Gillum, the junior. He has come in and become a key contributor for this team. Props to Coach Josh Hurd for noticing that kid on the bench and saying, hey, why is he sitting here? Get him in the game. He had a huge game last night for the Cavs, was a big reason why his team won the game. So that's a part coaching and part player. Props to the player for taking his opportunity by the horns. Props to the coach for giving that player an opportunity, and that's what you can expect under Josh Hurd. Everybody's going to have a chance to succeed under him. It's all a matter of actually going out there and performing. I love the way the program's moving. Yes, you're right. They're not where they want to be yet, but they have a core now. And there's some players on this team who are young. Colin Gillum's only a junior. Joseph Agee is a freshman. You look at Prescott Middle School. Josh Hurd's son is playing over there, and he looks like a high schooler playing with middle schoolers. Yeah, he really does. So things are starting to look up for this Cavalier program. They had a good season last year, but I think in a couple of years, this could be a really scary AAA basketball program. All right, there's our look around the Putnam County basketball, the various teams in Putnam County, I should say. BlueCross Bowl starts tomorrow, the next 3 days. Enjoy all the games. Make it out to Tucker Stadium. It's a great,
it's gonna be great.
It's a great environment to go to.
And the weather's going to be good.
The weather's actually going to be good, which is rare for December. So make sure you head out there, enjoy it. Say hey if you see us. We'll be out there most of the weekend. All right, thanks for watching the Upper Cumberland Reporter Coaches Show, brought to you by Ford Lincoln of Cookeville. I'm Noah McKay. He's Buddy Pearson. Have a great week, everybody.